Hello and welcome to the Deep to NBA podcast. My name's Sean and joining me as always is the one and only Dante Boffman, man. How are we?
I'm alright, Sean. How are you?
Good, mate. Why are you just alright?
Well, I'm actually good. I'm great.
Okay,
it's great to be here. I have a story that I want to tell on the pod. Would you like to hear it?
Do tell.
So, on Saturday night last week, roughly halfway between the last time that we podded and now, I went to a party. And I was leaving the party. It was late. It's probably about 2:30.
Good time to go to the dentist.
Yeah, very good time to go to the dentist. You're telling me. And then I'm leaving. You walk out the back. It's through a laneway.
Yeah.
And in the laneway, there's garages like open out onto the lane. So I walk down a little bit, and then a couple of my mates call out to me, and they're like, "Oi, come up here!" And they're on top of this what looks like a garage roof, and they're just having a dart. Hanging out, you know.
You've got roof-topping friends.
Yeah, and at 2:30, like, who doesn't want to be on top of a garage roof? Like, of all of the places you could be, that's high on the list. So anyway, I go over and I'm like, yeah, awesome. Walk up the stairs, just easily accessible stairs from the laneway. Walk up onto the roof. They're on the other side of the roof. So I walk across the roof. And as I step onto the roof, the entire floor collapses underneath me. They're literally like in like a two square meter radius, I reckon. That entire section of roof just collapses. We found out after that it was made out of rotting wooden floorboards. And so it collapses and I drop through the roof into whatever's beneath me. And luckily, I was positioned close to a crossbeam, like when the roof collapsed.
Yeah.
So I just caught myself on the way down and I'm just hanging there. And all of my mates are like, what the fuck? Are you okay? What the fuck is going on? Because imagine from their perspective, 1 minute I'm there, 1 minute I'm not.
And Saturday night, you're under the influence as well, yeah?
I was pissed. I was so intoxicated.
Yeah.
So I'm just hanging there. And they're all like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. So I just hang there and I start to like pull myself out, but I can't get any purchase on any like solid, not rotting wood. So I just kind of lift my legs up. And put my legs like on the crossbeam where I'm hanging. So I'm kind of like all like almost like fetal position, but like holding myself up. And then they kind of like tiptoe over, being careful not to slip through the roof. And they come and pull me out. And then we all got off the roof after that. And no one went back on the roof. And we were, you know, it was hilarious.
Was this someone else's, Raj?
Mate, don't know. I'm not asking any questions. Because if I ask the questions, I don't know that I'm going to like the answers that I come up with. So we all get off the roof. Having a grand old laugh about it. Like my shin is like chopped up, like I'm bleeding. My other mate got like a wooden splinter in his hand and he's bleeding. And then everyone's like, oh, that was hilarious. And then the next day, you do a bit of reflecting. And the days after. And I've actually realised that it was quite a dangerous situation that very easily could have...
been horrible.
Yeah, very easily could have ended with me being seriously hurt.
Yeah. That's crazy you caught yourself.
Yeah.
Far out. I thought the story was going to end with like, you know, as you were falling, someone's hand came out and grabbed your wrist, and then you looked up and it was Nikola Jokic, and he's like, "I will win game 4, brother." Yeah, it's like someone pulled me up and they gave me $50, and that was Bill Gates before he got famous. And
then they started clapping.
Yeah, I love those. I love those situations where it's just like I could have died right now, because once I was on the outside lane, turning right on a roundabout, which is completely legal, on the way from Eltham to Bundura. And this guy, I'm doing about 40, this dude's doing 100, and like just missed my car by like, you know, a bee's dick. And if that was just like a second later, it would have just absolutely T-boned the crap out of my head.
Yeah. And then, You'd have been done in for.
Yeah, and I had a great day that day. Like I went there.
Was this at the end of the day or the start
of the day? This was morning. So this was I didn't need a coffee, but I still got a coffee. That coffee tasted delicious. It was the joint that you and I used to go to at Latrobe.
Yeah.
Writer's Block.
Yeah, Writer's Block. Yeah, wow, that's where this podcast started.
Yeah.
Is that Writer's Block at
Little
Latrobe?
meeting over a Reuben.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Wow. And that was... We probably have at some point in the last 2 to 3 weeks passed the 3-year anniversary of when we started the podcast.
Oh, you reckon we missed it? It was like April, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It says it on our shirts, which you can buy. It does say, it says established. No, it says established 2019.
Yeah, it says established 2019.
Not April 2019.
But it was April 2019. April's almost over. So this is 3 years.
3-year anniversary.
Wow.
149th anniversary as well.
Yeah, true. We've got the 1.5 next week.
All right, well, just before we get onto the actual meat of the podcast, 2 things to mention. The first, yes, we still have merch. We've still got a couple of XLs, couple of Ls, couple of Ms. So yeah, I think we actually have like 7 shirts left. And thank goodness we didn't buy any smalls this time. I don't know who the fuck ordered smalls with the hoodies, but every small person I know has got an M. So yeah, if you wanna buy a shirt which look very pretty, you can check them out on our socials and just message us there. And yeah, that's done. Let's move on to the next part, which is Lucas Petridis, who wrote an article for thedeep2.com on the WNBA, the upcoming WNBA season, and the storylines that, the major storylines that he's identified looking at it. And what do you think of the article, Mr.
Oh, it was an absolute banger. To be honest. It's really, really good. Written truly by a man at the top of his game. So it is a banger. It slaps. So jump on to, where can you find that one?
It's a URL. So if the podcast is called The Deep 2, it would make sense that it's thedeep2.com with no spaces.
No,
right?
that sounds too easy. That sounds too easy.
Mr. Boffer, are you in for a surprise? Well, all right. The small talk, aka the verbal foreplay, is over. Let's get on to the meat, aka something of the episode. So the playoffs are going on. Last time we spoke, we were in the thick of the first round. There were plenty of things to talk about. We unfortunately had to limit it to an hour and 20, which is a long time to wag your chin. But now that we're speaking again a week later, some teams have been eliminated. Some teams we didn't expect to be eliminated, and some teams we did have been eliminated. And we're going to use this episode to sort of look at some, the shit show that these teams find themselves in, and there's no better place to start than with the Brooklyn Nets. Dante, what do the Brooklyn Nets do now? Don't answer all at once.
What do they do? They have to, first of all, take a week off and do some soul searching. I think if you play with fire, as they have done time and time again, by the moves they've made and the personalities that they have irrevocably associated themselves with, you're potentially going to get burned. And obviously, it was a sweep in round 1, so pretty disappointing. I did see a stat thrown out there that in terms of point differential, it was the narrowest sweep in NBA history.
Wow.
But some of the games didn't really feel like that, and the fact that
pretty much game 1 felt like that, but not
the
really
fact that you got so little from KD and Kyrie in that series is really cause for concern, especially because Kyrie, who lamented after the fact that the team didn't have any time to gel, which, fucking get it together. You absolute fucking loon. Get it together. There was a trendy kind of like NBA intelligentsia speculation going around before the playoffs started that maybe because he'd missed so much time, Kyrie was going to be really fresh and was going to absolutely torture. And in game 1, that looked like very prescient commentary. And then he just didn't have it. He did not have it. Could not get it done.
For a guy that's fresh, surely you try a little bit better on defense. Surely you get in a stance and not get back up.
Well, that's him. That's him at this point. He's 30. He's not gonna change now. He never has been a committed defender. He never will be a committed defender. I think in terms of answering your initial question, what do they do? You know that KD is going to be back next year. Kyrie has said that he's going to be back next year. It would be fucking calamitous if Simmons isn't on the court game 1 next season, or if Simmons isn't on the court in Madrid for the first preseason game next preseason.
Yeah,
it'd be a calamity. So you think you can bookend your roster with those 3, and then you go from there. You figure out what were we missing all season. Any reliable big man who could play any form of defense and not get played off the court. So that you'd have to assume is going to be their number 1 off-season focus, and then figuring out how to apportion the rest of the roster spots between Seth Curry, Patty Mills, Goran Dragic, like how much positional redundancy is there between those three guys and Kyrie.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to talk about is Kyrie Irving's free agency. So he's eligible to sign a 5-year, $258 million deal, or $48 million, something way above $200 million. That would be his maximum, which would see him through to his age 35 or 36 season, which is like, okay, this is a dude who has played like an average of 30 games for the past 3 seasons, both with injuries and his vaccination status. And as we know, a bit of a nut job, right? That is well...
Maybe the premier nut job of the NBA since I've been following, which at this point is 11 years. I don't remember there being any more of a nut job than him, and he's the worst kind of nut job because he's absolutely convinced that he's the brightest spark in the room, and then everyone else doesn't get it, but he does. But in actuality,
the earth isn't flat. But so let's start off with that, because you see Kevin Durant's got I think it's 3 more years left in his contract, and Kevin Durant, a normal person with his head screwed on, you say he has 3 more years left in his contract. Without him requesting a trade, he will be there for that contract, right? You know, barring something, the earth blowing up. With Kyrie Irving, if you sign him to a 5-year deal, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, he's going to play all 5 years for you. Like, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe there's another virus that comes around, he's not going to get that vaccine or whatever it may be. Like, I am not 100% certain he'll be playing out the entirety of that contract. But also, he had some very, very weird comments in his post-game presser, sort of the end-of-season wrap-up, where he said that he is, and he has said this for the past couple of weeks, that he really wants to re-sign with Brooklyn. He says he doesn't want to leave number 7, doesn't want to leave Kev, obviously Kevin Durant. And I'll read the quote here. It says, quote, "When I say I'm here with Kev, I think that really entails us managing this franchise together alongside Joe and Sean." That's Joe Tsai and Sean Carroll. Sean Marks. And this is like... I think we've spoken about this before, but it's so fucking upsetting to see a team that, and it's funnily enough that they got eliminated by the Boston Celtics, because these were the 2 teams that were in that Billy King trade where they traded away Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce for all just every pick ever, which turned out to be Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and if you can guess James Young, right? So like this is crazy that these 2 were good enough to both be title contenders, both face off in the first round, and both just like be at this level despite that trade ruining Brooklyn for so long. And we know that Brooklyn's built slowly. They made really smart decisions. They had that amazing culture under Kenny Atkinson. They made the playoffs without a superstar. They had all these trades that were just tiny minor victories that ended up obviously taking on a lot of salary to get picks in return, hitting on all their picks with Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, and just doing everything right. They might have been the model organization in terms of just being good and getting better. And then the reward for that, and what might actually be the punishment for that, is the reward is you're in a big market. These superstars in Kyrie and KD say, hey, we really like what you've got going on there. You've got a great assortment of role players and heaps of cap space and heaps of movable guys and heaps of assets moving forwards. We want to join you, and then why wouldn't we win a title, right? We obviously saw that happen. They signed. It's like, oh my God, you can't beat the Nets, and this is just incredible. And now everything that's happened has happened. There's been a lot of, let's say, non-basketball reasons why things haven't gone wrong. You've obviously got the vaccine with Kyrie Irving. You've got James Harden deciding not to play basketball. People don't know if he's actually reversed on that decision yet. And you're here right now today where you've got Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, who... I love Kevin Durant, but he just flamed out of the first round of the playoffs in a very embarrassing fashion.
Yeah, he was bad.
He was bad and got outplayed by a guy who might be the next him, right? So you're at this situation where they've built slowly and smartly, and it's all beautiful. And then now you've got Kyrie Irving, who I don't trust with a fucking basketball, let alone a basketball like front office. And he's saying, no, we're going to go in there and we're going to make the decisions with Sean Marks. Sean Marks, who has proven time and time again that he doesn't need someone else making decisions for him. I trust him fully, and shout out to Sean's out there. But what this is essentially a punishment, and it's like they didn't end up getting the title. They did everything right. They attracted the superstars, and I don't think this is going to get any better, and it's definitely not going to get better if you've got Kyrie and KD making major roster decisions.
Well, I think that the most likely reality based on that quote is that Kyrie thinks that he's going to co-manage the franchise with the multi-billionaire owner who's got a multi-billion-dollar investment in it and the guy whose literal job it is to pick the players.
Yeah.
I think maybe he thinks that, and maybe they're letting him think that, but I doubt seriously that they would actually be so daft as to actually seriously give him any kind of weight in the decision-making process. And I think that the whole saga of the Nets is a testament to how important it is to have the non-basketball stuff in place, because Harden came to the team as like an appendage almost, who was only possible because the other two guys were there, and he the whole time essentially was not in tip-top condition, not in basketball shape. He was really good for them for periods last year. He was really bad, and at the start of this year he was dog shit. He was terrible. And conspiracy theories or rumors as to like why he eventually wanted out will look at like he was frustrated that Kyrie wasn't actually around the team and like was basically doing his holdout. But it's clear that Kyrie, who has fallen out with every franchise he's ever been to, is a destabilizing presence. And it's clear that Harden, whilst he was destabilized by Kyrie, is not a dedicated pro anymore who's putting work into his body and on his game. And the fact that he's gone to Philadelphia and continued to struggle is testament to that. So they pushed all the chips in and they got 30 all-star appearances between their three stars. But one of them is a complete lunatic. And one of them is just a guy who's not committed. And on paper, obviously, it looked amazing. We're saying the Nets are going to run the league for the next 3 years, but it really is a testament to the human side of things that those over the course of long seasons, 100-game seasons if you're doing it right, and multiple of those back to back to back, those human elements will rear their heads in really unpredictable and often damaging ways, and I think that's what we've seen. So yeah, you mentioned it before, but Kyrie's played 103 games out of a possible 221 in the regular season. He wasn't good in this playoffs. He missed half of the elimination series in the second round against the Bucks last year. So it's not like it's even been, he's not available during the regular season, but come the postseason, he really turns it on. He's either been bad or unavailable in the postseason as well. So 3 years into this experience of having had 4 All-Stars, including Ben Simmons, come through in these 3 years, and they've got 1 series win.
And I really like Charles Barkley's thing where Kevin Durant says just another day where, you know, all these guys are going out of God, and then Charles Barkley's like, yeah, God with the play-in banner.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons was supposed to play in Game 4, and it seemed like he came from his party with and Clutch and stuff. They said, yep, Ben Simmons is going to come in, he's going to play basketball in Game 4. Then the morning of, it came out from came out from... Don't know who it is, but he didn't play. So let's say he came from our own eyeballs.
Came from Shams.
Okay. And then Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN said that the Nets were, quote, surprised and disappointed, unquote, that Simmons didn't play in Game 4 after telling them that he would. They had a meeting with owner, manager, and Simmons, and then he talked about the fact that he has... Simmons has a mental block that exists for him to returning to the court, and that is creating stress that could be a trigger point for all his back issues. I've never heard of that. I'm also not a doctor, so let's leave that for now. But it does line up perfectly, and credit to Nate Duncan for coming up with this, that it does line up perfectly where if his argument to get all of his money back from Philadelphia is that he couldn't play because of mental issues, this helps in that case. Because if he says to Philly, I can't play because of mental issues, and then he gets traded to Brooklyn and he plays the next day, right? If he plays the next day, then Philly goes to court and says, well, you're actually... you weren't mentally fit to play for Philadelphia, but you were mentally fit to play basketball. So when he went to Brooklyn, then we started to hear about the back issues. We never heard about him when he was wearing number 25 for Philly. So now that the back issues are there, you can obviously just say, hey, I've got back pain, and then everyone's petrified to put you on the court because back's a serious thing. Cough, Michael Porter Jr. So as soon as Ben Simmons says, I can't play because of a back injury, hard to really quantify despite today's miraculous medicines. And then when he goes to court, let's say a year or 2 years from now, to go back to Philadelphia 76ers to try and get his money, they can't point the finger and say, hey, but you actually played for a different team. He goes, well, I would have played for a different team, but maybe he also wouldn't have, because they don't have that defense anymore because he had a back issue, which just completely removes that bullet from the chamber of the Philadelphia 76ers lawyers. Not a good look on top of the other looks we're getting from him.
Well, I mean, for your new team to be in a life or death basketball situation, and for you to be potentially able to help them, and the only thing you're thinking about is how can I manipulate this situation to get the maximum amount of money out of it, maybe is an indicator of who he is as a person. But also, I'm sure the Nets wouldn't appreciate being essentially used as a pawn in his legal battle between the 76ers and himself. Because could he not have just said, my back's too sore, I'm not going to be ready for Game 4? The fact that his team came out and circulated it, that he was actually going to be ready, that he's feeling good, that he's participating in drills, etc. To then pull out must be so galling for Sean Marks and the Nets front office, because, and this is something that Nate Duncan and Danny LaRue talked about a few days ago, but that he shouldn't probably have come back and played anyway, because you're down 3-0, there's no point. If there's any risk at all in him getting hurt, don't bring him back. But then him circulating that, clearly if he's circulating that, there's agreement from the front office that they do want you to play. That they did want him to play. And then to pull out ostensibly for material purposes, if Nate and your premonition is right, that's what this was, that it's a ploy essentially. And if it's not, if we consider that it's not, he says that a mental block exists for him to return to the court, which is also creating stress that could be a trigger point for his back issues. Well, I guess you've had 12 calendar months to work on the mental block of you returning to the court. And I can't think of any possible situation in which someone with 12 months and access to the best professional support money can buy couldn't get past the mental block part of it. And I don't know that the stress that could be a trigger point for his back issues even stands up, because 3 weeks ago when it came out that he had back issues, they weren't talking about stress. They were just talking about back issues, the back issues that were going to keep him out. So the back issues, the stress and mental block seems like a retroactive attempt to try and connect his back issues to his mental health, which is very consistent with what they've done the entire time over these last 12 months, constantly adjusting and altering the story and releasing new information that's he tried to force his way out, and yes, he said that he wasn't going to train, and yes, he's not reporting, but he's only doing that because he's got this, and then he's got mental health issues. And it's just from the outside, it's quite transparent that there's a lot of desperate finagling going on here to try and paint him as a victim, when in actuality it appears that he is the perpetrator of most of this stuff, not only on himself but also on the teams that are trying to employ him to play basketball. Everyone wants to pay him money to play basketball. He just for some reason is deciding that he wants to not play basketball. No one would have can you imagine an office worker being I've had an experience in the workplace that basically means that I can't work, and I've got 12 months and you're paying $2 million a year for me to see the best psychologist, and over 12 months I can't go back to the office, but you still have to pay me, but I'm not going back to work because I've got a mental block about going back to the office. No.
Yeah. Sports are weird, eh?
Sports are weird, and this is the worst of player empowerment, because people love to yell about player empowerment when player empowerment means that your favorite superstar from your small market team decides he wants to go and play in LA, which is fair enough. But that person making a decision about where they want to live, where they want to go and earn an honest living, okay, you can have questions about that. You can say that sucks, we need to change this, yada yada. But there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But when player empowerment looks like teams handing themselves over or like strapping themselves because they want to or they have to people like Simmons or like Kyrie, who are just obviously, think of any superlative, any adjective that you want to throw out there. This is the worst of it, because now teams don't have the wherewithal to basically say to Ben Simmons, like, all right, well, like we're literally just freezing your contract. Yeah. Get on the court, don't get on the court. Like, you do you, but you're not getting a cent out of us.
Yeah.
People like Kyrie essentially holds the entire team hostage, and the front office has to come out publicly and say, we support him making the decision that's best for his health, even though he's costing the business hundreds of millions of dollars potentially. He's costing everybody else the chance to do their jobs actually properly, and making life generally difficult for each other. And because of player empowerment, the empowerment of the players to be dickheads, the teams have to kind of stand by it.
So if I was Sean Marks, and this was the situation I was dealt with, I would begrudgingly pay Kyrie, because there's no other way you get a point guard that good on your roster. And I would honestly trade Ben Simmons, and you would get into this really weird situation where he never actually played for your team. But I was just quickly trying to think, we're obviously going to deep dive with this a lot when it gets to the actual off-season, but something I was thinking about is a potential Ben Simmons trade, and one that came to mind, I was looking at all the teams that were interested in Ben Simmons before the season started, one being the Indiana Pacers, and in the off-season, a trade of Ben Simmons for Malcolm Brogdon works. Would Indiana do that?
I don't think anyone's going to do it.
Yeah?
Not before you've seen him on the court. Because
but this might be the lowest his value ever is.
Yeah, but this value's low for a reason. Like, it's not like his value's low because of an injury and you're confident that like he can get back because your doctor has experience like rehabbing someone back from an Achilles injury, and you're confident that he can get back to 95% of what his previous athleticism was. It's much more volatile and much more unknowable. And this dude sat out an entire season for two teams and has done all of this rigmarole, this fuck around. Like, how do you know that he is going to be, the benefit of him is he's got 3 years left on his max contract after this one. So he's locked up. So he can't it's not like he'd get traded from New York to Indianapolis and then be like, nah, I'm walking, I hate living here, like, fuck the cornfields, I'm leaving. That can't happen, in theory, but considering that he's now the premier example of an NBA player demanding he get paid his full salary for not performing any of his duties, like, how do you know that he's not, like, going to hold out? How do you know that at the first sign of trouble he's not going to, like, run and hide? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Also, how do you know that anyone in the locker room like wants to play with him?
Yeah.
Bringing that kind of person to the franchise is a real risk.
Yeah.
On the macro level, but bringing him into the locker room and into the team is a real risk as well, because I can't imagine that there's many players around the league who look at him and go like 100% this guy's justified. Like, get it, my brother. They probably look at him and they probably talk to people, their friends on the 76ers, maybe even on the Nets, and like, you can guarantee, what Joel Embiid's telling people at All-Star Weekend about Ben Simmons if they're talking about him. Like, Joel will have nothing good to say about him. We know that much based on his own public comments that he's made and then had to walk back.
Yeah.
So I just don't see someone trading for him because he's too volatile. If he plays 25 games for the Nets at the start of next season, and then they decide now his value's recuperated a bit, we want to get off of this, maybe then we look to trade him. And if he's averaging 18, 8 and 8, and he's playing all NBA D, like, okay, teams will be interested for sure.
But then, like, he's probably operating out of the high post. You got Kyrie and KD running around him, and it probably just works just because you got Kyrie and KD.
Well, it might work. It also might not. Like, I would be hesitant to just like, a few people around the NBA media are saying like he's the perfect fit. It was like, well, actually, let's wait and see, because
no one can defend.
This is a team that never really figured out how to use even two of the of the superstars together. Like, they didn't really do anything innovative with all of these offensive weapons that they've had.
They were just good at basketball.
They rolled it out and said, go for it. Like, we've seen that in this playoffs with KD and Kyrie. There was no, like, system. There was no scheme designed to leverage both of their skill sets. We saw that with, you know, the injuries that they've had over the last couple of years have meant that there's often only been 2 stars available. And they never really came up with anything coherent. And Simmons isn't someone who you can just roll the balls out. Like, Simmons will need to be integrated schematically as much as, like, familiarity with his teammates. Like, he'll need to be coached into the team.
So you need to change everything you do around him.
It could very much be a situation what we've seen in Chicago with Vooch a little bit, where you bring in someone with a great skill set, and then you don't quite figure out how to leverage the offense around that skill set, and he's just kind of out there not able to do the things he does best and actually exposed in ways that his skill set maybe doesn't suit. And with someone with such a limited, obviously, skill set with Simmons, it's just insane that we've been talking about this dude for a year, and the fact that he can't and won't shoot jump shots is only the 11th most important thing about Ben Simmons going into this season. So
yeah. Just going back to that Vooch point, I feel pretty vindicated they turned it up in the playoffs like I said he would. But
did you say that?
Yeah, because we were just talking about, like, oh, you know, he's fallen off a little bit halfway through the year for obvious reasons because he plays with 3 really good other players. But I'm like, I trust him to, like, when he needs to get a bucket. He averaged 19.7 points. So let's do some quick arithmetic.
You're not even looking at the screen then. You're looking up into the sky just trying to do the calculations.
Yeah, you look there for calculations, there for memories, there for excuses, and that doesn't translate well to audio.
No, it doesn't, but I thought it was funny.
All right. Well, one final comment on the Brooklyn Nets situation that you wrote down here, but I couldn't agree with more. Fucking poor easy money sniper. Like, I like KD, as I said on the JVG pod the other day. I'm rooting for him wherever he goes and in whatever series he plays for. But fuck, like, he's just friends with the wrong guys. It's like when you come home after going to, like, fucking Airport Westfield when you're 14, drinking too much sugar, and your mum's like, "What are you bloody doing? Having five soft drinks? You're hanging around with the wrong crowd." Fucking poor easy money sniper. What do you reckon?
I reckon poor easy money sniper as well, but he has to take some responsibility for the people that he associates with, because anyone and everyone could have told you that hitching your wagon to Kyrie was a bad idea. And he did it anyway because he knows him better. And I wonder in his heart of hearts, in his private moments, does he regret teaming up with Kyrie?
Well,
or does he regret that it was Harden that got traded and not Kyrie?
Yeah, could be. I think, was there a report of that, or did I dream that? But in his heart of hearts, like, if he'd re-signed with Golden State after that season, they still would have drafted Jordan Poole with the 26th pick. So,
well, you're saying you wouldn't have had a job anymore?
No, I'm saying, what, as in Kevin Durant wouldn't have a job anymore because he's got enough scoring. Like, he still misses a year. Jordan Poole still puts up 1 million shots in his rookie year. I would say he still develops into the player he is. And not a bad situation.
If he...
Let's not talk about hypothetical how Jordan Poole goes, because we could talk about...
Well, if KD had stayed, regardless of missing a year, he'd have another ring.
You reckon that... Because what? Klay Thompson gets injured again. You reckon KD, Steph, a rising Jordan Poole...
KD, Steph and Dre, roll that out. Don't worry about anything else. Ring.
You might have had to face a team in the playoffs last year, don't they?
They faced teams in the playoffs from... were you having a dig at me there?
Yeah, the Phoenix Suns.
Here I am trying to keep my analyst hat on and deliver hard-hitting, cogent analysis. And you're just fucking making it into, like, my team's better than yours. Well, that's fucking great.
All right, let's take a quick break before we talk about the Chicago Bulls.
The depth, the deep two. God, that's a mouthful. Anyways, I'm Marco, co-host of the Hey, Daniel Gafford, what's the name of our podcast?
The JVG NBA Tribute Show.
Wow, I can't believe it's that easy. Thanks, Gaff. You probably know us as two members of the Four-Man Weave plus Marco, but we know you as our next listener.
Well said, Lucas. I gotta ask, how do we differ from the pack of basketball podcasts?
It's a great question, Marco. You see, on our basketball podcast, we have 2 male co-hosts.
Wow, truly groundbreaking. After this episode, stay on your favorite podcasting app and give us a spin.
The Chicago Bulls have also been eliminated. Were both the Nets and the Bulls a 1 seed at one point? I know the Bulls were, but were the Nets ever a 1 seed?
The Nets would have been maybe a 1 seed very early in the season. But the Bulls were a 1 seed halfway through the season. In January, the Bulls were a 1 seed.
Yeah. And now they've been eliminated in a gentleman's sweep, was it? Yeah, Game 5, at the hands of the Milwaukee Bucks. So where do they go from here? Because I don't think we've actually got a big enough sample size to realise what the fuck's going on with Big Artie's team here, Taurus Karnisovas. We got, guess how many games we got out of Lonzo Ball?
28.
Wow, 35. I actually thought it was way more than that. That might have been because I drafted him in fantasy and kept him for fucking 6 months after.
You'd have been laughing at the rest of the league for 35 games.
Demar Derozan obviously had an incredible season, averaged just under 28 points a game, and was just doing incredibly dirty things from the mid range. Zach LaVine had a breakout campaign, averaging 24 points. Vucevic accepted a smaller role, let's say, and turned into a bit of a different player. Alex Caruso proved his value once again. Patrick Williams played 17 games at the start and the end of the regular season. Looking at here, there's actually a lot of names that came flying through. But really, what do we have here with the Bulls? Their best player, DeMar DeRozan, is going to be 33 next season. Zach LaVine, who is a very, very, very good player, might be maybe a 3rd or 4th tier superstar in the league. He's 26 and up for an extension. Other than that, the team's essentially capped out with big contracts to Vooch, Caruso, and Alonzo Ball. What do we have here, and what do we have going forwards with the Bulls?
Well, I think presently you would have to say that this season was a lukewarm success. Because essentially at the start of the season, a lot of people were saying 6 seed, first round loss. And what's ultimately happened is 6 seed and first round loss. So that's a pretty disappointing return on investment for the moves that this team has made. The assets that the team has spent to get to this point, and also the asset that is this absolutely magical DeMar DeRozan season. So that might be construed in some circles as disappointing, to have only gotten the 6th seed and to have only gotten a GS in the first round. But I think the most important thing in such a disjointed campaign where Ball missed more than half the season, Zach LaVine was he played 67 games, but he was in and out and hobbled for much of the playoffs and the end of the regular season. We
should mention that, he had an underwhelming playoffs, but he was dealing with knee issues, and he will undergo left knee surgery this offseason, according to the Chicago Sun-Times.
Caruso also missed a lot of time with a broken hand. Thanks, Grayson Allen. And did he have a concussion or something where he missed
he missed the last 2 games. Do you know what was happening to Grayson Allen? Because he was getting booed in Chicago, obviously, because he's a C next Tuesday.
Yeah. Also because he's making every single 3-pointer he's taking.
So he's getting booed. So the Bucks fans started booing him at home. Because they're Chicago's not booing enough, they should be hating him more. So when he checked in today in the Game 5 win, they booed him, and he started laughing because they're that's funny, because on social media they're we're going to boo him, show him how to really boo. And I was that's I get it, you're sort of showing that you're a better fan base and whatever, but it's kind of weird that we all know he's an asshole, a big asshole, and not in the Kyle Lowry way, and he's a prick. And he deserves the worst from humanity, right? And let's not have too many jokes. Let's not buddy up to him too close. I wouldn't mind if he played in Real Madrid next year.
Yeah, well, he's definitely not going to. Isn't it wonderful to see 2 Midwest towns taking each other on about who can hate the players more?
You fucking love them.
You guys are fucking pussies at hating the players. We'll fucking show you how to hate the players.
Milwaukee are the cheese cunts, yeah?
Yeah, they are. The only saving grace in this situation is that the player that they were all booing was white. Because potentially black players being booed in Wisconsin could be construed as taking a a racial twist, much like in Utah. What's the band that's always used as like the analogy for the
Jimmy Eat World?
Yeah, Jimmy Eat World. Yeah, I feel like Milwaukee would be among the whitest cities in the NBA.
Yeah, I think there were actually some Bucks fans and Jimmy Eat World fans at the Grampians last Christmas. That's a deep one. If anyone gets it, send us a letter.
I most certainly do not get it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What happened at the Grampians?
There were neo-Nazi rallies at the Grampians last year.
Oh.
And then I went camping like 2 weeks later.
Well, I mean, it's a beautiful spot.
It's a beautiful bipartisan spot. Yeah, Mum's like, I'm like, yeah, Mum, going camping with some friends. And she's like, oh, yeah, cool. I'm like, Grampians. Oh, she's like, what? Have you checked the news? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, picnic at Hanging Rock.
Big on Karen to be plugged in on the movement of the neo-Nazis.
No, it's full like on the ABC and stuff. She's not on like fucking r/bad things. But yeah, she's like, yeah, maybe watch out. Like, there's just these park rangers walking around. Because my mate actually ended up speaking to one of the park rangers and was like, fuck, did you hear what happened? And he goes, yeah, man, I'm just driving up to this spot just to be like, no open fires, take your rubbish with you. And there's just flags and shit. He's like, fuck. Must be pretty spooky to be, a bad person.
Yeah. Let me just finish off my
Grayson Allen take.
No. The Grayson Allen was a tangent inside a tangent. I just wanted to say that though there was lots of instability, particularly in the second half of the season, there is, I think, proof of concept that this team can be really, really good. Mm-hmm. Because they were one seed, they were deserving one seed, they were absolutely blitzing everyone. They were the one thing that they weren't doing was beating the best teams. So it remains to be seen how good they can really be in a playoff environment. But the way that this team is playing for the first half of the season, mm-hmm. I think that is proof of concept of what the team can look like when everyone's healthy. And if they had kept that going, despite the fact that they can't, if they were healthy and kept that going, despite the fact that they can't beat the best teams, they could still very easily have been a top 4 seed. Mm. So, and I mean, if you're a top 4 seed for a team like Chicago currently, like to be a top 4 seed is an absolute accomplishment.
Yeah. Just two things there. They were 2-20 against playoff teams. But like top 4 seed, this is exactly what we were talking about when we criticised their off season, because it was very short sighted. Very, let's just make the playoffs. Let's just be a good team now. I don't think they're going to win a title this season, despite they were a deserving 1 seed. I think Lonzo Ball fit perfectly. It was a really nice little defensive tandem with Alex Caruso. But like this isn't going to win a title. This is just going to be, at best, a very good top 4 seed. They're not going to beat any of the East Elite next season. They're not going to beat them the following season. It's just sort of short-sighted. So, like, when we eventually ask the question at the end of this conversation, what do the Chicago Bulls do? It doesn't matter, because they're not aiming, chestnut checkers. They're playing checkers. They're not aiming to win a title here. I honestly believe that. And this is... There's a million moves they could make to solidify a top 4 seed. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that I don't know that that's necessarily quite fair. I think it's fair to say that they won't win a title, but I think they are trying to win a title. And the organizational philosophy comes down to, it's easier to get great from good than great from bad. Mm-hmm. And I kind of agree with that in many ways. Like, there's multiple different ways to go about that within each kind of like conceptual pathway. But seeing the success or lack thereof that the teams that have tanked really, really hard at various points in the last 5 years have had, like, not many of them have actually managed to cement themselves as like true championship contenders. Like, Philly is really the only one that stands out. And Philly, like, for just as much luck and, that luck that they needed in the lottery balls bouncing their way a couple of times.
Jalil Okafor.
They have needed so much luck that they have fucked up at every single juncture. Mm. Personnel in the front office, ownership, the players that they're actually selecting, the
Tobias
coaches.
Harris over Jimmy Butler.
Literally, like, they've made the wrong decision at almost every turn, and they still somehow find themselves with 2 All-NBA players in the playoffs. Mm. So that, I would be pretty prepared to chalk that up to dumb luck rather than, like, the proof of concept of your game plan.
But no.
So I think for the Bulls, sorry, like, to just say, like, if we can invest a reasonable amount of assets, which is what they've done, because they haven't, they overpaid for Vooch, but they still do have assets on the roster.
They also overpaid for Demar Derozan.
They did. Well, they didn't actually overpay for Demar Derozan because the season that Demar Derozan just put in is worth $35 million, and they're paying him $27.
But
so going back to the business side of it, at the time, obviously it was an overpay, considering you could have got him for far less. But I mean, let's save the overpaid Demar Derozan conversation for next year, when he's paying like a $15 million player and they're paying him $27. But for the moment, it's like, well,
But he's probably hit the top 1% of what Demar Derozan could be.
Well, potentially, but he's just done it. So, let's...
And what'd it get you?
Yeah, well...
First round
what could it have got you? But I think that's a conversation that I want to have more broadly on Demar. Is like, if that is the absolute pinnacle of what Demar is going to do, is he going to be that good next season? And if he's still your best player next season... and the offense is still geared to him and his role is still the same, but he's only 80% as good, 75% as good. Like, where does that leave you? And I think that is the danger of where they could be falling into the play-in quite seriously, even if all the rest of their players are healthy and playing, because...
like Lonzo Ball's good, but, he's not going to drag you up. And, like, this team pretty much now just goes as far as Zach LaVine goes, and he's a free agent, an unrestricted free agent this offseason.
Well, he's an unrestricted free agent who wants a max who's having knee surgery. What kind of knee surgery is he having?
Arthroscopic.
Yeah.
They didn't say what it was. But, Zach LaVine had an amazing season. It's sort of overshadowed by what DeMar DeRozan did.
And rightfully so, because for 2/3 of the season, DeMar was like a genuine MVP candidate.
Yeah, and he's probably going to finish like 5th, 6th, 7th, right? Like that's still good. But if Zach LaVine isn't one of the 10 best players in the league, this team's just doomed to the treadmill of good for the next couple of years.
But hypothetically, what if DeMar is 95% as good and everyone's healthy next year?
Would you pick this team to beat any of the top 4 in the East?
No, but I'd pick this team to make the second round and to make it a series. And I guess the concept is like, it's easier to become a 2 seed from a 4 seed than it is to become a 2 seed from a 10 seed.
Yeah.
Which like I said before, I kind of agree with that, as long as you're not pushing everything in to become the 4 seed on the way to the 2 seed. Because you look at someone like Charlotte. Charlotte's pushed essentially everything in except their picks. They've got all of their cap space taken up between
bad player and another bad player.
Well, bad player, another bad player, and don't forget bloated veteran contracts. But they're about to max out Miles Bridges most likely, like pay him $25 million plus. They've still got Gordon Hayward on the roster, who at this point, he's been solid for them, but he's injured half the time, and they, reports are out there that they want to get off of him. Well, you're not going to be able to get off of him without attaching something. So they have kind of rushed in and, felt pressured to put up this situation, put up a team around him right away, and they're going to be screwed on the back end because of that. Whereas I don't think that Chicago have done that, because over the next few years, the only pick that they're at is their 2023 pick, which they traded in the Vooch deal. So they've still got Pat Williams.
No, they traded their 2025 to the Spurs for DeMar DeRozan.
Okay.
For the right to pay him $75 million.
Well, there you go. So they got two in the next 2 years that they could trade. They've got Pat Williams, who would be extremely valuable.
Extremely valuable. I agree.
Oh, I thought you were like, no. Steady on. Yeah, he'd be.
I got the cards.
Pat Williams is like a, maybe not a blue chip asset, but the
next Kawhi
below that.
You wouldn't want to trade Kawhi in his second year because you just don't know.
And they've got a collection of role players on reasonable contracts that not hard to see a team convincing themselves that Lonzo Ball is the answer and trading great player X or whatever. There's room for them to trade for better players to upgrade the roster, but they've also got the sort of players who are going to be movable if it all goes to shit and they're an 11 seed next year. It just doesn't work out. Bam, Lonzo Ball, contenders going to come in and want him, say he's going to be our Marcus Smart. Alex Caruso on the mid-level, done, ship it out. You can recoup the assets. I just think that they despite having invested a lot, they haven't invested too much, and they're actually walking the line reasonably well. And who knows? Maybe this team next year can actually match up against the heavyweights. And if they get into the second round, it's like you're in the second round, anything can happen.
Yeah, like you could face Philly and Ben Simmons just doesn't score in the fourth quarter, and you get lucky.
Hypothetically,
I get you. I just don't really like it, and like. If they lose LaVine, it's fucked. Like, the sky's falling if they lose LaVine. I don't expect them to.
The thing that I would just watch there is that a lot of the noise has been like, I want my respect coming from LaVine.
Yeah.
And people who feel like they've been respected the way that they want don't often go around talking about how they want their respect. So I just wonder whether there's like a bit of a Gordon Hayward situation here. Potential where they might offer him the max and he might just take the max from someone else and just go.
Yeah. So it was in the postseason. Yeah. The end of game. Of course, it's not going to come up. The end of game comments, but Demar Derozan was like, yeah, 100%. He needs to get respected this offseason. Like, they should pay him the max. Like, he fully deserves it. So like, yeah, I completely agree with your point, and the fact that other people are saying as well, a little bit like, why wouldn't you pay him? Like, he had like. He wasn't in the top 5, but he had like a most improved player campaign, and he proved that he's like can shoot off the dribble, can shoot consistently, and is a very good player. I just don't love it. Like,
if they lose him, I don't think they're a playoff team.
Yeah, obviously, but like if they keep him, I'm not thrilled at the prospects for the Chicago Bulls moving forwards.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think that they will achieve the heights that they want to. I just think that the plan is sound, and to take it one step at a time and to see what happens whilst maintaining enough flexibility to respond and react, I think is the way to play it.
I'm also just super cynical because the Bulls are always at the top of the league in jersey sales. They're always like top 3 in ticket sales. Michael Jordan wore 23 in red. Like, they make so much money, and if ownership says to Arturas Karnisovas, hey man, just make us some fucking money, like, he's got a job for the next 10 years.
Yeah. And the one thing that rich people love is more money. So
alright, let's talk a little bit about Trae Young, who struggled mightily against the Miami Heat, one of the best defenses in the league. What do you want to start with here?
I want to start with, I bet Trae feels... Well, actually, knowing
that was scripted.
Knowing NBA players and their opinions of themselves and their capacity for... I'd call it self-deception. I won't say I bet, but I hope Trae Young feels like a fucking idiot. I hope he feels like a fucking idiot for 20 games into the season when they were 7-13, saying, man, after you've been to the Eastern Conference Finals, it's just really difficult to motivate yourself for the regular season.
Such a stupid comment. And fucking John Collins said it too. Like, shut up, man.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about heliocentrism in the NBA.
Wow. I didn't realize I was on the Daniel LaRue podcast.
Trae Young is an incredible offensive player. Wherever he goes, he is going to put up incredible numbers, and he's going to win heaps of regular season games. And wherever he is, that team's going to have really good offensive rating, right? But you have to have different looks for the playoffs and different creators. And around this team right now, like John Collins, I do not like him in the regular season or the playoffs. Like, he's not skilled enough offensively to make up for his defensive flaws, and he's too bad on defense to play the 5. So you're always going to have an issue with a slow big man at the 4. Clint Capella, aging, and a little bit of what happened with him and Dwight is now happening with him and Onyeka Okongwu. Deandre Hunter averaged over 21 points for this series, but it was very much because Miami was leaving him open. He was also getting a little bit chippy in the series, which was like, hey, nice, you've got a heartbeat. Bogdan Bogdanovic is
one of them.
Is a very, very good player, but he's not your second best player in a title contender. Like, this team needs help. Thankfully, Travis Schlenk agrees with me, as he said halfway through the year, fuck, I should have done something different. And his counter move was just to get rid of Cam Reddish for a very heavily protected pick. Like, this team needs to give Trae Young some help, because right now, like, John Collins isn't cutting it. I don't like his role in the NBA, unfortunately for him. And, like, as soon as it gets to the playoffs with Miami, a smart defense with heaps of veteran defenders, and even veteran defenders who aren't Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry because they were injured, they're just like, oh, hang on, how about we just like focus everything on Trae Young? We've got Bam Adebayo who can just hang with him, and all of a sudden they've got absolutely nobody who can beat us. So it's like you can talk about Trae Young struggles and say it's Trae Young, and there was some very bad defensive looks and stuff down at the end of the game where he sort of gave up on the team, but he needs help, says the Trae Young stan.
Yeah, he needs help. And certainly John Collins has proven to be a limited player with the ball in his hands. And the lack of Capella there as like the tried and true lob threat, I think definitely hamstrings them. But at the same time, we know Trae Young is that good. He's proven it for the last 3 years that he's one of the absolute best scorers in the league. And you score 9 and 9 out against good teams
And bad teams.
You do it against everyone. And to come in and put up these absolutely diabolical performances is really for me gladdening. But for people who like really really believe in Trae as the fulcrum of an elite offensive team, and for people who are heliocentric stans, it must be really disappointing because like he individually couldn't get it done, and that's not to say like, oh, he would have been able to had he had this guy or that guy. Like he was, you're the one with the ball in the hands. Like you're the one that's taking the shots. You're the one that's deciding where you're shooting from. Just jacking bad shots, not getting into the teeth of the D. He had, I believe he had more turnovers than field goals made in this series.
He had like a double with turnovers, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He had 25 and 10. But no, he shot in 5 games. He shot above 43% once. That was in game 2 when he shot 50%, and the other 4 numbers are truly testaments.
What do they start with?
Sean, I'll tell you what they start with. One of them actually starts with a 0, because it was 0.08%. 8%, and then he shot 16%, 27%, and 43%. So dog shit.
Yeah.
And someone like Bogey in there, in theory, to be that like secondary playmaker and to take people off the dribble when they close out and keep the machine moving and spell Trae when he rests. That's essentially his role. Jelon Wright, in there as well.
Bit of a breakout.
Yeah, none of the other players on the team though are like really capable of anything with the ball in their hands, because Hunter hasn't really developed an off the dribble game. Gallo at this point has no off the dribble game at all. He's exclusively like a pick and pop scorer. Okongwu doesn't have that. Capella wasn't there. Collins, we talked about, has no bag. So outside of those 3 guys who can handle the ball, there's really nothing. And when the guy who's got the ball the most just doesn't show up.
And it has really good defense on him.
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, like, good offense beats good defense, especially when you're Trae Young. No one's looking at like KD against Tatum and saying like, wow, KD did everything he could, but Tatum was just too good for him. Tatum played the best fucking D anyone has played on KD in the last 5 years, including LeBron. And still, the narrative, the conversation isn't Tatum did everything to stop KD. It's KD just didn't get it done. You can't be the best player and be shooting 35% in a playoff series. You just can't do it. And it's the same here. Like, yeah, the Heat have an elite D. They have lots of different bodies to throw at Trae on the ball. They've got a big in Adebayo who can switch on to Trae capably on the perimeter. Cool. You're Trae Young. You're an All-NBA player. You averaged 30 points a game. Guess what? You average 30 points against bad teams. You average 30 points against good teams. You go against, statistically, and forgive me for breaking out the hard numbers here, but in the regular season, statistically, you go against a top 5 defense once every 6 games, because that's how regularly you play them. And it's not like once every 6 games Trae Young is shooting 8% from the field. Like, it's it's not I don't think it's just explained away by saying like, oh, he just got unlucky, like number 1 D. Like, no, this is a dude who has last playoffs, this regular season, last regular season, you know, produced at the highest level against the best competition.
Mm-hmm.
And he just didn't.
Yeah.
In this playoff series. And I'm living for it, to be honest.
Put him next to like Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson. Like, he's always going to be tied to Luka Doncic, and Luka Doncic is looking incredible next to 2 ball handlers. And there's 48 minutes of elite ball handling on that team. Trae Young, when he sits...
Elite ball handling? Spencer Dinwiddie?
Yeah.
All right.
I want them to get help. I don't know how they do it. But I hope we're not here 12 months from now saying, well, Trae Young once again couldn't beat the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round just because he's not good enough by himself. And maybe no one is. Like, maybe if you put Steph Curry on this team or a prime LeBron James, maybe they're also not good enough. Just going against a good defense with no help whatsoever.
Well, I think it's an interesting idea maybe that on a heliocentric team, specifically with a heliocentric point guard, that potentially it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that down the line they'll have no help because having the ball in their hands so much limits. And this is something that I think this concept probably first emerged in the modern NBA with
Jimmy Harden.
Well, I was going to say with Westbrook.
Yeah.
With the post-KD Westbrook Thunder teams.
Yeah.
And like Oladipo.
Yeah.
Where Oladipo, Sabonis, there are players who go there who ended up being all-star, all-NBA level players who, if they had an extra 20% time on the ball and your star point guard had 20% less, maybe Oladipo would have developed the skills in Oklahoma City that he eventually did in Indiana and been able to complement. Herder doesn't have an off-the-dribble game. Reddish certainly didn't, although I think with Reddish they did actually give him opportunities. He was just fucking terrible. They tried to do point Reddish at one point and they just were like, actually, you're supposed to have a positive assist to turnover ratio. Hunter doesn't really have that.
Yeah, and they don't.
None of the players who they've brought in who have like grown up along Trae Young have developed that. Whether you think that's because that's their skill set or whether maybe if they had had the opportunity and the reps to do that, we'd be in a situation where, along with Bogdanovic and DeLon Wright, Kevin Herter can capably run a pick and roll. Deandre Hunter is like attacking off of closeouts and like fucking, you know, posting up on smaller dudes and having a more diverse skill set. Potentially you wouldn't be in the situation where you're playing with one guy and role players, and if the one guy doesn't get it done. And the beauty of like a Dallas thing at the moment is that like you said, they do have solid point guard play with Luka whenever they want it. And at the end of the game, the last 5 minutes, if they decide to say we're playing Luka ball and we're going 5 out with Luka at the point guard, they can just do that.
But it doesn't have to be the whole game. And like the furthest, I think the best test case for heliocentrism is James Harden, and the farthest he went in the playoffs was with Chris Paul, because together at least one of them can break down the worst perimeter defender.
Well, and especially because that era of Houston basketball just turned into like essentially playoff basketball, where they're just picking the worst defender every time down and running the pick and roll.
And even Aaron Gordon can do it. You know, like, you know, Brunson, Dinwiddie, Paul, Aaron Gordon, like, you know, different players. But
Eric Gordon?
Yeah, sorry.
What's Aaron Gordon doing in the ball in his hands?
Trae Young needs help. Like, he didn't perform, yes, and that looks bad on him, and he's done some bad things, but he also needs help. And if he doesn't get it, then, you know, the Trae haters just going to keep going, and they should, because he's not.
So how does he get the help then? What move do they make? Because the obvious move that they make is whether they think that this season is the time to move on from Capella and install Okongwu as a starting center.
I don't even think you have to do Capella yet, because Okongwu, I was really excited to see how he played these playoffs, and he didn't play well.
Yeah, but he played well during the regular season.
I know. It's tricky, but I think you just trade John Collins for whatever you can, and hopefully it's a guard who can create with the ball in their hands, but who's giving up a guard creator getting paid the same amount as John Collins for fucking John Collins?
Well, John Collins to the Spurs was rumored, rumored a lot.
But you wouldn't do DeJounte for Collins right
No,
now?
you wouldn't. But like, had they decided to move on from Collins earlier, like, does Derek White and a role player and a pick for John Collins move the needle for Atlanta?
Yeah.
Like, just White, another person who can just handle the ball a little bit. Like, White's not a particularly amazing playmaker. But if you say to him, here's the big man, he's setting you a screen, go around the other side, and if he's open, pass to him. If not, pass to the shooter.
Yeah.
You say that to him, he can do it.
Yeah.
Not even throwing in the fact that he's like an elite defender, very bouncy. I don't know, hypothetically, like, who else is out there that wants John Collins?
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Maybe the Brooklyn Nets for Ben Simmons, but
Oh.
we'll have to. That's a great tirade. We'll have to wait and see, and that's why I love the off season. And I'm going to be mad if they don't get help for Trae, because it's no longer like
They will, because Travis Link literally fucking said
it.
Oh, maybe I should have actually done my job. Anyway.
Well, that's all we have time for, because my computer's about to die, and no one wants to hear me talk about Golden State versus Denver Nuggets.
Don't say that. Everyone wants to hear you talk about the Sean Ball. R.I.P. Sean Ball. It was fun, master.
It was actually fun. I was watching it today, and I was like, I've watched every game of this series.
Did you see the video that the AFL Instagram posted?
I do not follow any AFL.
Did I not
players
send it in
or
the GC?
AFL adjacent. Oh, was that Trae Young getting boiled?
Nah, that's even a bit much for me. That's a bit Alfred Payton-esque. No, it was the AFL posted a video of Clay riding in on his bike.
AFL posted that.
The AFL posted a video, and the caption was like, Alistair Clarkson arrives with Klay Thompson for Game 5. And you're like, what the fuck is going on here? And then there's a video of Klay Thompson riding in underground on his bike, gets off the bike, goes through the little like checker thing, and as Clay's getting off the bike next to the luggage conveyor belt, like where they check all the stuff, there's a man standing there, and the man is 4-time Hawthorn Premiership coach Alistair Clarkson.
So he's getting like VIP seats.
He's just in the underground, like putting
the
his
Warriors.
he's putting his bags and shit through the little detector box
Fuck
thing.
me, bro.
As Clay walks right behind him.
Dude, the Hawks will get any call.
It's insane.
That's wild. I need to rewatch that. I need to watch it for the first time.
Maybe I'll post it to the Deep 2 socials.
Oh, beautiful. Well, Dante, I'll speak to you next week.
That sounds delightful.